That was amazing. These were the Blue Devil drumline from California, USA. And I do not know how you feel, but I think these guys deserve another round of applause. So welcome to Inside 2017 in wonderful Berlin. Yes, it's cold, it's rainy, it's wet, it's stormy, but it's still wonderful. And it's the 4th time in a row that we are here. And I could not be more proud because we have the most important factors of our business here at this Inside conference. First of all, we have tons of customers here. We have thousands of customers here attending this Inside. And believe it or not, in NetApp and EMEA, we have 21,000 customers and 156,000 installed systems. So if you are the proud owner of a NetApp system, you are not alone. The second thing is we have our channels and our ecosystem here, which is something we've always been very proud of and which is very, very key for our joint future. And the third thing we have here is our employees, which from my perspective is the most important asset that a company can have. And to bring all this together at Inside is something very special. And compared to 4 years ago, we doubled our attendance. And this year, we will be around 4,300 attendees here in Berlin. Thank you very much. So why did we double the attendance? For me, the translation is a very, very easy one. I think storage is no longer a big topic, a hot topic for most of you, but data definitely is. And data definitely is a big, big topic all over the globe. So as you can see, we have 80 countries represented here at Inside this year, which is amazing from my perspective. I see the first row, stop searching your flag. That doesn't make sense. It is a truly international conference. Some fun facts, we had about 400 dietary needs that were presented to us, which is amazing and a positive thing. I admit 20 came from me, but still it is a lot. And we also had people traveling around the globe, and the farthest travel was from the guys in New Zealand who had a 29 hours flight, 11,000 miles to come here. I would give them a round of applause, but I'm not sure if they are sleeping in the hotel room. Diversity of an audience is not just about countries, it's also about sizes of the companies and the sizes of the customers being there. So you can see, yeah. Again, to the first row, stop searching the t-shirt size you chose. But honestly and seriously, there's 4 things that I promise you over the next few days that we have jointly together. You will have days full of fascinating technology. You will have great speakers and really, really interesting and fascinating sessions. You will have the opportunity to do networking with your peers, with channel partners, with alliance partners, with NetApp guys. So this will be a very, very good time for you. And hopefully when we come together, you will also have some fun. Because to be honest, from my perspective, with all the transformation that is going on in the market, everything is easier if we have some fun together. And so I was standing last year here on stage and did a selfie. And in the spirit of fun, last year I told you a very complex story why I do that. I told you that I'm collecting data and I send it to the cloud, and it was kind of weird and complex. So to tell you the truth is, I will do a selfie now just because it's fun for me. And there's 3 other good reasons why I do that. First of all, it is a proud moment for me. Second, I have to prove to my kids that I'm really at work this week. And the third thing, and it's probably too late for that, I have to prove to my oldest daughter that I'm not a 19th century dad. But as said, this is probably too late. So I will do a selfie, and I expect you to put your friendliest face on and say, hello, please. Woo! Thank you very much. Good. Very important piece is obviously our partners and our premium sponsors. And I would even call them more partners than sponsors, Because if you take a look at the names here, Cisco, Fujitsu, and Intel, these partnerships stand for long, long years of strong partnerships, partnerships of innovation, of customer success. And we are very proud to have them here, as well as every other sponsor that is here this year. And to be honest, the success that NetApp had over the last over the last 25 years would not have been possible without these kind of friends and partners. And also an event of that size would not be possible without these sponsors and partners. So please give a warm round of applause for these sponsors and partners. Thank you. The last thing I want to raise is something that is very, very close to my heart. And to be honest, I think everybody here in this room is in a very, very privileged situation. We were all born in places and families that gave us good opportunities. And we can talk about important and good stuff, but in the end, we are definitely privileged. And not everybody in this world is as lucky as we are. NetApp fights hunger for several years now, and we are working very, very closely together with an organization that is called Rise Against Hunger. And this is an organization that works on an international basis and provides food and distributes life-changing aid to people who are really, really vulnerable. And NetApp is committed, as every year and as every time, to support this. And our initiative this year is that we provide $1 for every tweet you do that includes @NetAppInsight or #NetAppInsight. And our target is to achieve 7,000 tweets. And I think this is a very, very big target, and I'm not sure if we can achieve it. I do not know how you feel about it. Can we achieve 7,000 tweets? No. Can we achieve 7,000 tweets? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's better. Thank you very much for supporting that. So for the very last time today, I have to ask you to put your friendliest face on, because I introduce my boss now on stage. And it is a very, very big pleasure for me to introduce on stage our Executive Vice President for Field Operations and Customer Operations, Mr. Henri Richard.
Thank you, Alex. Let's give him a big round of applause. We're very lucky to have him lead our operations in Europe. Thanks. So good afternoon to all of you. It's a great pleasure for me to be here again with you. I came for the first time at Insight Berlin last year. And this Insight 2017 is a little bit different. I'm looking forward to having this week together. But it's a week where we're going to try to collectively shape the future of our world. The theme this year is to change the world with data. I know that it's a big, audacious, ambitious claim. But the reason I believe in it, it's because your customers are already headed down this way. And that's what they expect of you, of us, to help them with. Many of our customers are leading the charge and are already delivering some amazing innovation. Let's just consider a few examples. From here, Germany, Lichtblick, a clean energy provider who delivers today 100% clean energy, combining hydropower, solar power, and wind power, over 1 million subscribers in Germany. And what's interesting about this company is that with the help of NetApp solutions, not only they're using data to transform every customer into a consumer of clean energy, but also into a provider of clean energy, distributing that power intelligently wherever it needs to be. Let's give a big round of applause for Lichtblick. Moving around the world, let's go to India, where the State Bank of India, India's largest bank, has an amazing challenge. They have 420 million customers in both urban and remote rural areas of India. To serve such a large customer base, SBI is transforming itself into a truly digital bank. They're taking a holistic approach to the digital customer experience, and working with NetApp, they're delivering tailored solution, strengthening their credit system in India, and in particular, focusing on real-time fraud detection. Congratulations, SBI. And in the US, the National Energy Research Scientific Computing Center, it's a mouthful, is the leading provider of computation to deliver accelerated scientific discovery. NERSC is bringing together a group of over 6,000 of the world leading scientists using advanced computation technology together with NetApp storage solution and data management solutions to work on problems that help change the world, from genomic sequencing to searching for supernova. Truly amazing achievements. Congratulations to NERSC. These are just a few examples of customers that we work with around the world that really make a difference. Changing the world with data is something that you will hear a lot more about at this year's Insight. And we're very proud as a company to be part of the solution that powers so many of the world's leading institutions that are trying to make a profound and fundamental change with data. Now, we all know that the world is changing fundamentally, quickly, whether it's economic pressures, demographic changes, pervasive and disruptive technology, the impact of machine learning, artificial intelligence. All of these things are requiring us to consider new ways to drive business performance. Soon, a generation that never knew our world, think about this, a generation that never knew this world without smart mobile devices and the internet, will become the largest group of decision makers in our society. Think about the profound impact on business expectation. Think of creating a business where every one of your customers is a digital customer. How is that different from where you are today? Every customer I'm talking to is trying to figure out how to respond to that equation, how to digitally transform themselves, and how to leverage technology to do so. And ultimately, how to utilize data to gain a fundamental advantage. You're in for a treat today. Data is truly becoming the world's most valuable asset. It's becoming more precious than gold. And our next speaker is going to brilliantly demonstrate this to you. You know, recently, after he spoke to us in Vegas, I was reflecting on the irony that at the beginning of the last century, it's the gold rush that made California and eventually Silicon Valley what it became. And now, once again, it's in Silicon Valley that the whole slew of companies are mining this new gold and are becoming the data innovators. In a way, it is the 21st century gold rush. So we're very excited to have our guest come to talk to you about how powerful data has become. He's a senior editor of data and digital for the respected Economist magazine. He's a regular commentator on CNN, NPR, and the BBC. He was a member of the World Economic Forum Council on Data-Driven Development. He recently contributed to a fascinating article in The Economist titled "The World's Most Valuable Resource, Data and the New Rules of Competition." Please join me in giving a warm welcome to the data editor of The Economist, Kenneth Cukier.
Hey, good afternoon. Let's try that again. Bring on the music. Hey, good afternoon. Yeah, thank you. That's great. Sometimes they tell you turn off your phones while this person speaks. Keep your phones on, tweet so that you can donate all that money to charity. I love data. I mean, I really love data. I love data so much that wherever I go, I've got to collect a little bit more of it. So what I'd like to do, granted it's a big haul, is try to collect a little bit more data right now. What I want to do is get a show of hands. I want to know who here thinks that data technologies are moving so quickly that you're going to be out of a job in 5 years and you're going to have to find something else. Raise your hand if you think that your job's going to be challenged. OK, so I see that's really about 31 of you. OK, who here thinks that, you know what, in a world of big data, you're always going to need someone who knows data. I've got a full employment act until I retire. Who here, raise your hand if you think you're always going to have a job. OK, who here thinks you're ever going to be able to retire? OK, who here wants to? I mean, it's a really exciting time, and it's a lot of fun. What I want to do right now is talk about some of the things that I really love, and that is about how data is transforming the world. And to do that, I want to begin with a story. And the story is of professional racing. Well, it's of NASCAR. Now, I know there's a dispute in Europe whether that is technically professional racing, whether Formula One should be the one that's used. But although Formula One is changing because of data, it turns out that NASCAR is changing too. And the reason why is because the data geeks are getting involved. So here's how the story goes. One of the biggest decisions you have to make if you're a race manager is when to call your car in for a pit stop. Because whenever a yellow flag is thrown, it means that there's debris on the track and that the cars need to go a little bit more slowly, and no one is allowed to pass. Okay, this turns out to be very important, because what starts to happen now is all the cars start to cluster together. You're not winning anything in time. There's no time advantage, but you can't pass either. So that should theoretically be the perfect time to go in or not. If you go in, you lose your rank. Or you don't lose your time. It's a trade-off. But going into a pit stop is really important because you need fresh tires. And you need fresh tires in order to pass. So what do? For years, race managers have had to make that decision based on sort of intuition, knowledge, experience, superstition, luck. A lot of like the ways some of our managers make decisions before we present them the data. So it's not quite clear what to do. And into this very interesting question comes Cynthia Rudin. Now, Cynthia Rudin is she doesn't look like a track manager, doesn't look like a race car manager, doesn't look like a pit crew member. In fact, she looks like a geek. But that's a good thing. She's one of the world's most important geeks because she's one of the world's most important statisticians. She's also a great professor. She was at MIT. Now she's at Duke. And what she's done in this instance, like she's done in lots of other cases, is she's collected all the data that she can possibly find with which to make decisions. And so she's collected things like the average time per stop, whether it's a 2-tire change or a 4-tire change. She's looked at the time in and the time out. She's looked at the time in and time out of all the other race cars in that same area. She's done all the different statistical regressions she possibly could. And she realized that to actually answer this question, she had to understand something that hadn't been understood before or even measured: the wear on tires. And what she understood and what she came up with was rather startling. The first conclusion was that, in fact, there was something called a neighborhood effect. That how one car would go in and out of a pit stop and whether it was advantageous to change your tires then or not depended not just on the performance of that car around the track, but the performance of the neighbors, what's called a neighborhood effect. And that's kind of strange because you would expect each car to be almost an independent variable and one car not affect another when it's going around a track, but clearly something else is going on. Okay, that's the first. The second was this. There's no such thing as a racetrack. There's race tracks. And different tracks have different effects on the tires. And to know the answer, whether you should actually go into a pit stop when a yellow flag is thrown or not, depends not just on the performance of yourself going around the track at that time, but on the given track you're on at that moment, because some tracks have a lot of wear on tires, and some tracks don't have much wear on tires at all. And this was never known before. And the effect of this results in a winning team versus a losing team, because in NASCAR, you go around the track for hours and you win by seconds. So what's going on here? What's happening? There's multiple aspects to the story. The first is technology. We can do things that we couldn't do before. Memory is cheaper. Processors are faster. The next is the data. We had the data today that we didn't have before, and we can do new things with that data. But the third and the most important thing, at least for now, is mindset. Cynthia Rudin has a big data mindset, an AI mindset, a data mindset. She understands that the information can tell her something, whether she has the humility and the know-how to extract that value. It's for that reason that we see data as a new resource, that it is a new raw material of business, a vital economic input. Traditionally in economics, we saw land, labor, and capital as the three factors of production, and we can empathize and see why people like Adam Smith and others in the 1700s didn't put information on the mix. Because it was so difficult to collect the data, store the data, and process the data. But today, all three of those features of interacting with information have largely gone away. They still exist, but nothing like they existed 2 centuries ago. And as a result, we can use information in entirely new ways. It's for that reason that we think that we're in a world of data, big data is getting the headlines, artificial intelligence and machine learning is absolutely everywhere. But to understand what's going on, maybe we can distill it down to just a few basic principles, and it would be this. There are things we can do with a large body of data that we cannot do when we're working with smaller amounts of it. That the change in scale leads to a change in state. That a quantitative shift leads to a qualitative shift. Or if you prefer, more isn't just more is different. So what does more look like? Well, more looks like this. You can see that by the year 2000, we used to think that we were in the information society. We were interacting with it only in name. Right? Even back then, the amount of analog information in the world vastly exceeded the amount of digital information. But by 2002, there was parity, and after that, it was game over. Right? And although Moore's law seems to be coming up against some natural principles, some physical principles, we're actually being able to use data a lot more quickly, not just in storage, but in processing, because we've got lots of different processors, and we're putting out these chips all the time. Although the amount of analog information is still growing, it's growing at a linear pace. The amount of digital information is exponential, and therefore, what looked like 2007, when the authoritative study was performed, looks a lot different today. We would actually be going multiple stories, probably 3 or 4 times the size of this auditorium. So how does all this work? If we have all this information, what are we doing with it? Well, probably the most interesting aspect of the data revolution is the area of machine learning. Now, it's the principle that goes under modern artificial intelligence and particularly deep learning. So it's important to understand it from its very origin. The idea is that we don't have to instruct a computer what to do. We don't have to program it and know explicitly the instructions of what it should do. Instead, all we need to do is simply feed it enough data, and it'll spot patterns and infer what the correct answer is simply through the data and the information quotient that's latent in that data that has now been extracted. Okay, what does that mean in practice? So maybe it's useful to look at the origin story of machine learning. And over here is, behind me, is Arthur Samuel. And Arthur Samuel is a computer scientist at IBM in the 1950s. And what do if you are a computer scientist in IBM in the 1950s and you like to play checkers, but you write a computer program to play checkers? And so he does that. He plays the machine, and he wins. He plays the machine. He wins, he plays the machine, and he wins. Because the computer program only knows what a legal move is. Arthur Samuel knows something else. Arthur Samuel knows strategy. So, he writes a small subprogram that operates in the background that after every move, it calculates whether the new board is likely to lead to a winning board versus a losing board. Very simple. It's a large probability table, but very intricate. He plays the machine. He still wins. Plays the machine again, still wins. And then Arthur Samuel leaves the machine to play itself. The machine plays itself. It collects more data. It collects more data. It increases the accuracy of its predictions. And then Arthur Samuel leaves the machine and plays it. He goes to the machine and he plays it. And he loses. And he plays and he loses, and he plays and he loses. And Arthur Samuel has created a machine that exceeds his abilities in a task that he taught it. And this idea of machine learning is going absolutely everywhere. It is, as you may know, the basis of AlphaGo, DeepMind's algorithm that was able to trounce the world's best Go player, Go being infinitely more complicated than either chess or checkers. And it's interesting that it's an echo, a really very direct echo, of the original machine learning approach that was both trained on human matches and on itself in the AlphaGo 0 algorithm that was just released about a month ago, in which DeepMind had the algorithm Go just simply play itself without any other prior knowledge. And through reinforcement learning, in which it wins an award to understand what is the right program, or the right operation at any one moment, that was able to do much better than the original AlphaGo. So there's something to this machine learning idea after all. Machine learning has been going elsewhere in terms of the gaming industry. That would be very relevant to us today. It's also been able to win the world's best human, beat the world's best human in Texas Hold'em poker. And why that matters is that the only way to win Texas Hold'em poker is to bluff. So in effect, we are building artificial intelligence algorithms that are capable of deceiving humans. Now, this might lead to some other problems down the road, but for the moment, you want to be careful before you play online poker. We use machine learning absolutely every day, and everywhere we look, we can see it. So if we go onto Google and we type the name of the CEO of NetApp, and lo and behold, we misspell his name, how did Google know? You know, who at Google uploaded all the executives of the Fortune 1000 companies to identify where every single executive is and how their names are spelled? Well, nobody taught the machine to do that. It was simply a machine learning algorithm. They weren't uploaded information deliberately. It simply scanned the entire global internet in what looks like 0.61 seconds. It found that throughout the entire global internet, there was about 20,000 results, and that this word triplet of George Curie and NetApp was far more common with the K rather than the C, and therefore it revealed that this is what's going on. It was simply a machine learning algorithm. It was programmed, and every time I click, it informs the machine what I was actually really looking for, and if indeed I'm looking for someone with a C, it will know that too, and it will change, and the algorithm will learn over time based on that new signal, treating absolutely every interaction as a signal. It's because of machine learning that computer translation is no longer so laughable. Speech recognition works. That we have self-driving cars. We're not any better at enshrining all the rules of the road into software. The algorithms aren't particularly smarter. The fact is we changed the nature of the problem from one of explicitly trying to tell all the steps to a car of what to do in any moment to simply changing the nature of the problem into a data problem, collecting as much information as we can around the vicinity of the vehicle, and having the car figure out for itself what to do at a given time. That this is a traffic light, that this traffic light is red and not green, that means you must stop and not accelerate. And if the car, which is a computer on wheels, makes 1,000 predictions a second, you can have a car that can drive itself. Now, really interesting research came out just several years ago in Boston and in Stanford that looked at whether a machine learning algorithm could spot the incidences of severe cancer as well as a human pathologist. They didn't instruct the algorithm what to look for. They simply uploaded lots of examples of biopsies as well as the patient survival rates. This person lived for 30 years. This person lived for another 3 months. And they tried to see if the machine learning algorithm could perform as well as a human pathologist. And interestingly, it could. In fact, it was able to identify the 11 telltale signs that best predict severe cancer. The problem, the medical literature only knew of 8 of them. 3 of the things that the algorithm spotted, the human practitioners didn't know to look for. It was hidden to the human eye. It was revealed through AI. So if you are a pathologist, you might want to reconsider what you do, because if it is to make decisions under conditions of uncertainty based on your training and your experience, you've got a problem, because the algorithm might do better than you. But it's not just pathologists, it's whatever you do. In any profession, if you believe that what you do to bring value is to make decisions under conditions of uncertainty based on your training and your experience, you have a problem too. Because an algorithm is going to gun for your job. And it's not to say that you won't have a job. There's no reason why we don't need more pathologists in the world, but their job is going to change, and your job is going to change. Now, this has been a story of hospitals, and therefore it's been a story of people too. But of course, this is not a story about hospitals, and it's not a story about people. It's about something more. Right? It's about looking at absolutely everything under the sun. Every gust of wind, every leave, every heartbeat, every sales transactions, every flight that flies overhead, every turn that a NASCAR driver makes around a track, and thinking about the world as a platform for the collection and the analysis of data. So what's the value of data? Well, in the past, the value of data was the primary purpose for which it was collected. In the modern world, the value of the data is in the reuse of the data, the secondary purposes for which it can be put. I'll give you an example through Walmart. Okay. Walmart collects sales transactions, and of course they collect sales transactions for bookkeeping. They need to know how much they sell. Several years ago, they married their huge database of sales transactions with weather data, and they spotted that before there was a hurricane hitting America's Northeast, not only would sales of storm supplies like flashlights and batteries increase, but also sales of Pop-Tarts, the sugary American breakfast treat. Now, it's not a food, it's a treat. Okay, so why? Well, we don't know, it's just simply a correlation. But what's important is that Walmart could act on this. They could identify that when the storm is approaching, they can stock the Pop-Tarts at the front of the store to ease life for consumers who are rushing in and rushing out, and also increase their sales. It's in this sense that the value of the data is in the reuse of the data, that the data has become a vital corporate asset. And so there's lots of new ways that when we look around the world, we see data occupying this privileged position. Just several years ago, just last year, I should say, Caesar's Palace was in bankruptcy court. And one of the creditors noted that actually the most valuable asset of Caesar's Palace was its database on its customers. And they valued that data at $1 billion, the worth of that data in bankruptcy court. Now, the bankruptcy judge largely agreed. He accepted the fact that the value of this data was as high as that, or certainly very, very valuable. And we knew this because we knew that affiliates of Caesar's Palace that was able to use the data outperformed expectations, and those that were not able to access that data underperformed. So clearly it had a value. But the bankruptcy court judge made an interesting observation, and he said that actually, but the value accrues to Caesar's Palace because that's whose customers come there. The same data going to a rival might not extract that same amount of value. So he couldn't award it at that privileged price because the value was in flux depending on who could tap it. Another example, last year around this time, Microsoft acquired LinkedIn. Now, they paid $26 billion for the company. LinkedIn has the data on white-collar professionals around the world. About 400 million people are registered with the social networking platform, about 100 million active monthly users, so that's a lot. Now you're valuing each one at $260, it's a $26 billion acquisition. Huge amounts of money. What were they buying? Well, it's clearly not based on revenue. Although LinkedIn does charge for its services, most people don't pay. They get it for free. So what were they actually buying? Well, for Microsoft, which has been in the business of shrink-wrap software for decades, what they were buying was a way into the data world by understanding the interactions of professionals, who's connected to whom at the office and in the workplace, in a way that when they leave their job, this is the way that they can still interact with other people and maintain their network. The value of the data. Now, there's lots of incredible examples of how data is reshaping society. One that I love very much is in shopping patterns. There's a loyalty card program in the UK that has identified that shopping patterns can predict the onset of dementia before overt symptoms exist so that people then go to see a doctor and then get prescribed drugs. And you can think of the huge value to this, to the individual, as well as to their loved ones, as well as to the families, if they can get this early predictor of dementia. And the shopping pattern, one of the signals that's most pronounced, is that people start shopping for the same product and lots of it, as if there's some sort of comforting element of having the familiar nearby. Criminal justice has also been reshaped by data. Lawyers are able to interact with all the caseloads of other clients in other judicial proceedings to identify what are the precedents that best work. But interestingly, it's not simply maybe the most winning arguments or the most winning precedents to conjure up, but in fact to do it not just on a district level, but on a judge-by-judge level, in the same way that Cynthia Rudin could tell a race manager what to do on a given track rather than what to do more generally. So we can refine to the level of the specificity that we couldn't do in the past. What does this all mean? What's happening? Well, in the past decade and a half, we've been thinking a lot about the human genome. We've been thinking about how we can understand the map of life, the code of life. What I'm trying to suggest now is that there is a similar genome with data, but it is a social genome. It is a digital DNA or a data DNA in which we can actually decode signals about society, whether it's a racetrack, whether it's a judicial proceeding, and we can see the DNA or the genome of many features of society that we couldn't know before. And how we use this information relies on our creativity, and we can think of lots of interesting ways in which we can apply some of our wacky ways of thinking about the world and apply some of our imagination to treating the world in a new way by tapping the data and also presenting it in a modern way. Because it's not enough to be in the engine room collecting the data scientist now has to go up into the boardroom and make the case. And that requires leadership, and it requires vision. And it requires creativity. One of my favorite examples in that area is in the area of international trade and development. Now, the international agencies like the IMF and the World Bank and the Commonwealth Office in Britain and elsewhere, and of course in Germany it's very prestigious, the international donations that the country gives. It's all been a great victory, but there's never been anyone who can actually look at the data altogether and make sense of it. And when you try, what you get is a long table. And of course, nobody can understand this. Like, is this obvious? Not going to happen. So some clever people at the University of Maryland at an NGO, a nonprofit organization called AidData, figured out there would be another way. They added a GPS tag to every single dollar spent by all the aid agencies in lots of countries. And this one in particular was Kenya, one of their first examples. And they didn't care that it actually went to Kenya. They wanted to know who was the recipient of the aid. It wasn't about the NGO based in Nairobi. They wanted to know where did it actually go? Who was the end recipient? Every dollar, a GPS tag. And then they threw it onto a map. And this is what it looked like. And you can just imagine the panic running through international aid organizations when for the first time they saw what was happening in Kenya. So the first thing that they saw was actually there's a lot of programs down in the south, close to the airport. And they had to wonder, was the aid being spent to the benefit of the individuals who needed it, or for the ease of life of the donors who were making that donation? Because it was all within about a day's car ride of Nairobi. Okay, so what they also noticed is that when they looked at the areas of the largest poverty, and where the aid was being spent, there wasn't always a direct correlation. There were some regions of the country that in fact weren't getting much aid at all and actually were in the most dire need. And then if you were to map on, and I did not, but if you were to map on top of this, the map areas of the tribal regions in Kenya, you'd see an entirely different picture as well. And it looks like there's some tribes that are particularly good at collecting and getting donations, while other tribes are less good. And so it leads to a whole new appreciation of how we're interacting, in this case with donations, but how society interacts with information to improve the world. The data provides insight, that's true. But the data only provides that insight if it is used. And there we have some ways to go. Just as we treat currency as valuable, and money is largely virtual today and digital, so too, if we have banks, we should have data banks. And to extend the metaphor, there is a multiplier effect to the data, just there is for money. In the banking system, as money gets shifted around, $1 sloops around the system about 9 to 14 times, expanding the money supply, so too with data. We could imagine that if we put the same data and we put it into our data warehouse and don't use it, it's like land that is held fallow and not productive. And of course, we want to activate it and use it. And there's lots of ways that we're doing that for benefits, but there's still ways to go. So one example is looking at voice recognition systems in banking. One of the great ways that fraudsters call up call centers and steal money is they pretend to be the account holder. And so what they do is they call, and you could actually imagine the banks running through that voice against a database of known fraudsters, except that data is not shared, and so it should be, or it's not shared in an easy way. It is shared, but not in an easy way. You can also imagine that hospitals would be collecting data and identifying different features of what should work in certain cases and others, but again, the data is not used as much. We still have a way to go. And particularly with communicable diseases like Ebola, it would be great to have a real-time map of how the disease is spreading, but the rules are restrictive, and so epidemiologists are not able to tap that data, and they probably should be. So we need to understand that we have a moral obligation to use data, to facilitate the use of data in society. What are the implications of all of this? Well, the first thing is that change is happening. Who you need to know changes. What you need to know changes. Who your rivals are will change. Who your friends are will change. There's a whole slew of new interactions that are going to take place where the data scientist has to be joined at the hip with lots of other business managers so both sides can succeed. The next is the idea of a legacy advantage. At the outset of the World Wide Web, it is true that the advantage slipped to the startup because people could imagine new business models being unencumbered with the brick and mortar world simply in a digital platform. But in a world of artificial intelligence and machine learning and big data, that advantage shifts again back to the legacy operator. And the reason why is because the incumbent has the data. Whether they are able to tap into it, if it's clean enough, if it's ready enough, and interact with it in society to make it the fuel of their business is the dominant question. There's still lots of concerns as well, and we should be mindful of what they are and open-eyed that the big data world and the AI world is not simply an easy one to get into. Questions of privacy, ownership, and transparency. One of the biggest problems I think that we're going to have to interact with is this original sin, if you will, this original curse of deep learning, and that is that we know that it works very well, but we don't know why. And so we're going to have to make a decision as a society whether we're willing to accept its benefits and get whether it's a loan application or whether it's an operation and a diagnosis, knowing that we can't explain how it reached that decision. Now, it's not going to be true for 99%, or actually about 95% of the cases, because that's going to be a traditional statistical approach, a tree map, decision tree approach will also give us explainability. But for that fringe 5%, there will not be explainability, and we'll have to treat it in a case like faith, like medieval people used to treat the voice of the priest. Are we willing to do that? It'll be an interesting approach. What is certain is that the world of data is going to be the way in which we handle our global challenges, whether it's climate change or curing disease, whether it is managing our cities or whether it is managing our stock portfolios. Data is going to be at the heart of how we make decisions and how we optimize all aspects of society. I think it's going to be glorious. I think that we're going to be able to use information and empirical evidence about the world in a way that we never really could before, other than in cases of astronomy. But just like with astronomy, as we had to rethink our world and our place in it, because there was a geocentric theory in which we were the center. In fact, we realized we're just part of the larger whole. Data is going to teach us that same thing as well. I think it's going to be very humbling for us as people, but I think it's going to be very beneficial for us as well. And why do I tell you all of this? Because it's going to be through data that we find competitive advantage and thrive as businesses too. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Magnificent. It's the second time I hear you, and I could hear you forever.
Was it consistent?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. So you've talked about a few of the interesting challenges that the world is facing. Can you tell us about some examples of emerging usage of data?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's a great question. The thing that I find really interesting is the way that you can be in the business and not notice something until it hits you, and then when it hits you, you understand, how did I not get that before? So I'm on the board of a nonprofit organization based in Geneva called International Bridges to Justice, and I've been on the board for several years, long before I started really plowing into data. Data comes along, and they ask me, how can we play a role with data? And I think, I don't know, it's going to be hard. I mean, what we do is we have lawyers in developing countries who literally rescue people in failed judicial systems, usually for basic legal rights. A woman who's arrested goes through an arraignment hearing. Normally it should be a week or 2 months to know if there's enough evidence to hold the person. She's held in prison for 7 years, right? Just crazy outcomes. And it turns out that we are also developing an app so that the lawyers in developing countries can manage their caseloads. You can all see where this is headed. Clearly, the data that we collect on the app can tell us a ranking of how human rights and legal rights is either improving or not just on a national basis, so you can compare different countries, but down to the level of the district basis of the area, as well as how the different lawyers themselves work and how they best succeed or don't, and so we can coach them as well. Everybody wins, and it's going to be data that is the fiber that reveals something to us as a society that we didn't know before.
So you've mentioned an example of cross-functional use of data. For example, retailers being able to inadvertently somewhat find out that maybe some of their customers may have Alzheimer's. There's other examples of opportunities to cross-reference data and find interesting things, particularly in the area of healthcare. Can you give us another example?
Yeah, sure, happily. So one of the most interesting areas for data analysis is going to be healthcare, but one of the problems is that the privacy rules, which are legitimate and good rules, they make a presumption, and the presumption actually it's not even a presumption, it's an assumption, because it's actually not overt, it's latent, so it's not visible, is that the statistical approaches they use is of the period when they created these privacy rules, which is largely the 1970s and 1980 was when they were enshrined. And they presume classical statistical processes and analyses, but in the modern world of data analysis, you get a lot more findings when you add more data. So an interesting piece of research in the United States has looked at the ability to predict who's going to get hospital infections before the infections happen, so that you can take measures that with less intervention to help people who would otherwise suffer, not to suffer, and to prevent people who might otherwise die, not to die. It's a great win, but the problem is that instead of using just a handful of data, like 12 different features that we know would predict hospital infections, they're using 11,000 variables, not just the electronic health record, but also things like the financial data, the HR data of who was in the hospital room at that time, etc. It's so abundant that it's hard to bring these different data systems together, even though you can actually predict far better today with that than you could in the past who's likely to get hospital infections, and therefore you can save lives. And there too, we need to find a way to create a carve-out from a regulatory standpoint so that we can experiment in this way, because right now the rules even forbid experimentation without a lot of difficulty.
So there's a lot more left to change the world with data, but thank you for your insight. I think you brought to life the reality of what can be done. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Henri.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Cook here. He's got some fascinating stories to share. Before I bring up our panel, I'd like to share with you some exciting research that we just kicked off. You know, in a world that's changing rapidly, obviously you heard it, we need to change too. And we have to be thinking about how we will not only survive, but thrive in this new data-driven environment. So NetApp recently set out to understand how data is changing various industries and to provide a data-driven way to help our customers plan for the digital transformation journey. So we partnered with IDC to survey 800 enterprises worldwide, about a third of them were in Europe, to assess what were their data challenges and where they are in their digital transformation journey. We call it the Data Driver Study, and today, in partnership with IDC, we're sharing our findings. And we found some fascinating things. First, already a third of the world's data is residing in the public cloud. And by the way, Europe is no different, even though sometimes it's perceived as lagging the US in terms of public cloud adoption. We found that digital transformation business outcomes are most favorable where cloud use is the highest. We also found that 47% of the organization that we surveyed already have a chief data officer. Interestingly, in Europe, only 27% of our respondents had a CDO, a clear opportunity for Europe to accelerate its journey. What we've also found in these organizations is that they're all on a progression of maturity, from resistor all the way to thrivers. And let me tell you a little bit about each of those categories. So the resistors, well, they're companies where business and IT initiatives are completely disconnected, they have poor data management, and they have no enterprise strategy. It's bleak. Our survivors are places where the lines of business realize the need for developing a digital transformation business strategy, but the progress is not predictable or repeatable. The responders align their business and IT goals in the enterprise at the global level around the creation of new products and services. But they're not yet focused on the full disruption potential of these digital initiatives. Then the next step is the synergizers. They have implemented digital transformation discipline. They have a data strategy, they have a vision, and execution is continuous. And then finally, the thrivers. Those are the companies that are aggressively using digital technologies to disrupt new markets. And their ecosystem and lesson learned is a constant feedback input to business innovation and transformation. Just as Ken was talking to you, I was looking at the Wall Street Journal page, first page this morning, and Anheuser-Busch, the largest beverage company in Americas, that's held by a Belgian holding company, just changed their CEO. The new CEO statement in the Wall Street Journal of what is he going to do different is the usage of data to understand his consumers. I think the board of Anheuser-Busch decided to go from survivor to thriver. It's happening everywhere, every day. So what are the likely attributes of a data thriver? Well, first, data is considered to be an asset. Data will become an intangible asset on the balance sheet of companies, as you heard the story of the casino in Vegas. IT and business works in unison, as one entity. Data maps are created to allow data visibility and control. The insight on data spans all of the systems, including development. Data quality is considered a top priority, just like product quality. And of course, data is available and disseminated uniformly across the entire organization. These are a few of the best practices that any organization can duplicate. So what are the benefits? Well, we found that compared to data survivors, data thrivers are seeing 6 times greater improvement in operational efficiency, 3 times greater new customer acquisition, and are likely to grow their top-line revenue twice as fast. Those are pretty impressive numbers. So to talk a little more about this, I'd like to invite our research partner, IDC, along with 2 distinguished IT leaders to join me on stage. Please welcome Laura Dubois from IDC, Michael Yegi from Borsche Stuttgart, and NetApp's very own CIO, Bill Miller. to the stage. Hello, Laura. Michael. And Mr. Miller. Hello. So I'll do quick introductions. Michael Yagi is the head of IT at Börse Stuttgart. Börse Stuttgart is the leading exchange for retail investors in Germany. Thank you for being a long-term NetApp customer, using our FlexPod architecture, working with us on managed services, consumption models. I mean, you've been an innovator with us throughout the years. Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you for being with us on stage. Bill Miller. Bill is my very important customer one. As the CIO of NetApp, but Bill brings to NetApp an incredible career leading IT of many, many technology companies in the Valley. And we'll talk about what we're doing in-house to be thrivers. And then, of course, I'd like to have a special thank and welcome for Laura Dubois, who's Group Vice President at IDC. Thank you for the partnership, and it's great to have that research that we've done together, and I'm really anxious, I'm sure the room is as well, to hear about the results of that Thriver study. So starting with you, Laura, you know, why this research and why now?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and the short answer is revenue. So revenue is being impacted and at risk of disruption in nearly every industry. And what we found in our research, that it's the degree of revenue that's impacted, that's variance between industry and industry. So I'll give you some examples. So in the utilities industry, we see great change going on, new sources of energy. We heard earlier about solar and wind, electric cars. So 28% of revenue is at risk for disruption in the utilities industry. And then you take financial services. So 18% of revenue is at risk for disruption in financial services. When you have new types of banks that are forming that are 100% digital, no physical footprint at all. And you have the role of an investment advisor changing, where you have the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning that's helping to change how investment advice is given. And so it's this, in the short answer, is revenue is at risk. And so companies want to avoid that risk.
So Laura, continuing with you, I know that, like it's often the case, research confirms certain intuitions, but also brings sometimes surprises. What were some of the surprises in the study?
Yeah, so we saw several key sort of ahas or surprises. The first one I would say is the changing sentiment around hybrid cloud. So 5 years ago, the outlook on hybrid cloud was, it's really an unanticipated outcome or consequence of using cloud services. And I would say today, we've seen a dramatic shift. And so hybrid cloud services are ones that companies are embracing more and more, but where they're designing for hybrid cloud. They're building hybrid cloud into their strategies. And so it's a strategic intent. So that would be one key thing. Second key thing is the degree to which companies have embraced hybrid cloud. 56% of organizations worldwide have embraced hybrid cloud. And what does that look like in EMEA? Well, 48% of EMEA organizations have embraced hybrid cloud. So that's second key kind of aha. And then the last key aha is the use of hybrid cloud and of data in hybrid cloud as a source of innovation and disruption.
So Michael, we heard Ken talk about, our jobs are going to change, the world is changing. Laura is talking about how quickly things are being affected. So at Börse Stuttgart, digital transformation, tops down, bottoms up. What are your initiatives?
Well, what are our initiatives? Let's look back. Digitalization started in 1986 in the financial markets when the first electronic exchanges come. And since there, it always have been in disruptive steps going ahead. And we're just doing another step into the future. And let me make it clear. Data for us is the base for information, and a marketplace is made out of information. Information from the companies that are listed on the exchange, information from the analysts, information from the stock exchanges to put out bid and ask prices, to also inform at what price a equity was traded. So it's all about take in some data and push out a lot of data. So digitalization for exchanges for a long time was a question, a fundamental question of surviving or not surviving. Now, what do? Basically, we collect a lot of data, we consolidate a lot of data, and we push it out again. Please be aware, we recognized quite a while ago that data or information has value per se. For example, we sell bid and ask prices and paid prices, trading volumes, etc., plus statistics, historical statistics, etc., to price data vendors like Bloomberg, Telerate, or others. We push a lot of information out to the internet with delayed prices of the exchange on our website. So we are forced to have a big database and to have a high quality of data. Let me make another aspect where we also use a huge amount of data. It's in our basic function as a marketplace operator to ensure a fair and orderly trading. So we use massive data, massive analytics out of different sources to detect illegal market practices like price manipulation, front running, fraud, or things like this. And this has always been there, and in order to be a competitive marketplace and a marketplace where the investor in the end is fairly protected, we have to deal with that data too. So for us, we're going to see challenges in that area. And I make a last point, if we talk about the new regulation in Europe, that's based on information. It's based on massive information. We have to ensure that they're kept for a long time, safely kept, and that we can analyze them. So that's about it.
Thank you, Michael. Bill, you don't strike me as a survivor, more like a thriver.
We're thrivers.
So where are we thriving at NetApp in terms of our digital transformation? You joined us about a year ago.
About a year ago, right. For this audience, what I talk about is our Active IQ installation. Some of the people in the audience may be familiar with it. It's based on our auto support platform. It's a very rich big data engine for us, and it allows to provide our customers with a lot of insight and wisdom about their installed base and their system. So we're able to take many, many data points into this large database and look at a variety of attributes of their environment. We can monitor 7/24 the health of their systems. We can tell them when it's time to upgrade or when it's advantageous to do an upgrade to a new version or a new platform. We look at capacity. If our users are running out of capacity or need to enhance capacity, we can look at their workloads. Some of the workloads that they're running and determine whether it would be a good time to upgrade that environment. Lots of other attributes. It's available for flash and for spinning disk. One of the things I find interesting about the environment is not only is it available to our customers, but it's available to our sales engineers. So they can provide insight and feedback to the customer community, as well as many of our channel partners that act on behalf of our customers. So I said, big data platform, big data platform. Over 300,000 active endpoints reporting back with this data. About 218 countries to date, I believe is the number represented. 36 billion data points per day coming in. So that's a really, really rich platform for us to mine for the benefit of our customers and channel partners, and we're very, very excited about it.
So Bill, staying with you, a lot of people in the room either call on you, if they're NetApp members or colleagues of yours.
Yep.
And a lot of people in the room work for you because they're part of a large enterprise IT organization. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about how you see the roles changing in both people that call on you and people that work with you.
Yeah. So let me talk about some of the folks that work for me and work around us. You know, a couple of trends that are changing the workspace, I think, in the job space in IT. Let me start with this notion of customer one and running the converged infrastructure formats that we build. So not only converge, but moving aggressively with our solid fire equipment towards the hyper-converged environment. So you know, traditionally we had engineers in a data center working on one form of media or one component. Today, you really have to evolve your skills to be an expert in storage, compute, networking, and really building a next-gen data center. That's what it's about, the next generation of data centers. So there's an upscaling in abilities and talent to do that. But it's not just about the storage or the compute, it's about the data. Okay? And the data exists today in a hybrid cloud world. That's the reality. You know, Laura talked a little bit about this. People are embracing hybrid cloud at a much faster rate than we had previously anticipated. So that means data is sitting in a variety of locations. Our engineers need to become pretty facile at moving that data around and adopting data fabric tools and techniques to be able to move that data into places where they can apply advanced analytics and things of that nature. So that's the second thing. The third thing I think my peers and colleagues and even the folks that call on us are doing is they're trying to build in more agility. Okay? You need to be able to build up environments, virtualized environments. You need to do that in an automated fashion with software to stand up environments for innovators, for developers, for engineers, to be able to run your simulations, your product development algorithms, pull that data out, and then shut down those systems for reuse the next day. In that agility, that dynamic nature is really challenging our engineers and our colleagues around the world. It's an exciting journey.
Michael, how's it for you? I mean, changes in your organization and also what's next in terms of your digital transformation journey?
Well, with respect to data, a couple of years ago, we started to centralize the data management. But we called it different. We called it information management. And today, we have a centralized, complete overview to get sorted the data, because data per se is one thing, but you have to sort it the right way so that you can make optimal use of it on one hand. On the other hand, to ensure the quality. So directly reporting to me, we had a whole area centralized to take data out of different subsystems, compare them against each other, and ensure a higher quality of data. And I think we're going to continue like this, and we will much more concentrate on this own created data in comparison with data that's available in the cloud, that's available public. Wouldn't it be interesting which information somebody gathered through Google before he made an investment decision, or before he chose our market to trade on, or a different market? So that's where we're going. So consequently, ensure the quality of data, increase the quality of data, make it comparable to the surrounding, to the global data, and to much more share, you know, to give back more value to our customers by giving them information, which is consolidated data on what's happening on the exchange. That may not only be for the exchanges, that may become valid for also not stock exchange driven markets like MFDs or other order crossing organizations. So we'll see there's still quite a big path to go. And it will make one of the differences, whether you are a leader or whether you are a follower.
Bill, you obviously talked about Active IQ. We're here at Inside Berlin. You want to lift the veil on maybe some of the things that are going to come next on Active IQ?
We're really excited about the platform already. You know, the potential just keeps growing with new tools and platforms and systems. So, you know, we're moving this towards the ability to give customers a more comprehensive health check of the all-around nature of their systems. Many of our customers are moving to the cloud. You look at the Microsoft Azure relationship, where we'll start seeing ONTAP and similar systems in the cloud. We'll have to be able to reach across those environments to give a singular view of the well-being of the customer's environment. We'd like to be able to continue to get smarter about the customer optimizing their environment in order to achieve full ROI on the assets they've employed. You know, we don't want to have wasted cycles when that's unnecessary. And then in some cases, if a customer deploys a series of attributes or configurations on the system that maybe result in a more risky build, we'd like to be able to identify that confluence of events and inform the customer before something untoward happens. And of course, we've seen this year with ActiveIQ, we've got a mobile application that'll continue to evolve. We'll go more mobile, more form factors that a customer or a channel partner can see what's going on at their leisure and when they need to do it. So I think the real fundamental core of this evolution is the AI availability, the platforms of AI and machine learning, and that coming available in the cloud with more and more capabilities. So as we can apply those modern analytical techniques to this ever-increasing richness of data, we'll be able to provide the customer with much more insight to get full maximized value out of their install base.
Laura, Albert Einstein had many fun quotes. One that I love is he said once, "The only person in the world that likes change is a baby with a wet diaper." And obviously a lot of things are changing, and we found this in the survey. Yeah. For the people in this room, what sort of advice do you have to give them?
Yeah, so I mean, as an industry and as IT professionals, we need to prepare and plan for change that's coming. And we see change coming along several key vectors. So the first vector we see change is in emerging roles and shifts in skill sets. So we see new roles emerging around data. Michael referred to his data management organization. We see chief data officers emerging. We see data architects and data scientists emerging. And so you're going to need to be able to interact with not only with data, but these new data roles. And in terms of skill sets, we see Bill talked about with convergence and hyperconvergence being specialists in more than just one sort of technology domain. And we'd absolutely see this. So, knowledge and expertise across compute, networking, and storage. But also skill sets emerging in terms of development getting much closer to operations. And so development and operations moving into a DevOps model. For the delivery of agile infrastructure and IT services, and moving to much more of a continuous integration and continuous development sort of mindset, if you will. Because infrastructure is increasingly getting automated, and it's getting automated through software and APIs, and augmented through machine learning and AI algorithms. And so in the future, the triaging and troubleshooting of infrastructure challenges is going to be triaged by looking at source code. And so you need to begin to plan for what is my role going to be in that new paradigm. And I would also say we see the role of data driving increasing levels of a diversity. So diversity in terms of where that data exists. Is it in a public cloud? Is it in private cloud? Is it across SaaS locations? Is that data in endpoints? Is that data out at an edge, a customer edge, a network edge? Is that data structured or unstructured? Is it machine generated or application generated? And being able to deal with this distributed amount of data that's in a hybrid world and providing, as IT professionals, data services in this hybrid world. So data services for data security and compliance, data services for data protection, data services for data integration and optimization. So Michael talked about data quality. And lastly is the intelligent placement of data and the optimization of where that data lives. And so we see these changes being ones that all of us need to embrace as we help our companies to really drive new levels of innovation and move from becoming, from a survivor to being a thriver in this data-driven economy that we all live in.
Thank you, Laura. I really believe that this survey and the results that we kind of glanced over is fascinating. The information will be available to all of you on netapp.com, but also on the Insight mobile app. So I really encourage you to go and check out the results. They're fascinating. I want to thank our guests on the panel, Michael, Bill, Laura. Thank you very much. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Once again, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, guys. I thought that hearing the panel really puts into perspective both the challenges, but also, more importantly, perhaps the opportunities as we respond to this big transformation in our business and in our industry. I hope that you learned some valuable lessons and gain insight in dealing with the important opportunities that we have ahead in terms of changing the world with data. Now I'd like to spend a few minutes and share with you our perspective on where NetApp is today and our roadmap for this new digital world. We know that change is accelerating, and by 2020, 50% of the Global 2000 will see the majority of their business dependent on digital transformation. It is becoming the strategic agenda of most organizations. And it's simple. It's because it radically improves the performance and reach of enterprises. Today, when you speak to business leaders, you'll probably see digital transformation cloaked in one of these three business imperatives: using digital technology to reach new customers in new ways, build new data-centric digital businesses, or simply radically improve business operations. Those are the three categories that we've chosen to simplify this view of where the market is going. In a digital world, business process is essentially reduced to software and rules. And what's left of value is the data. And that's why we think of the data as the lifeblood of a digital organization. But as we all know, data is increasingly distributed, diverse, dynamic, rapidly changing in its form and scope. And putting all of this distributed data together to get value, to have impact on the business performance, is a huge strain on the traditional siloed IT infrastructure. And there's a reason for that. It's because most IT architectures that are being discussed with us today and used were designed for a business process-centric world, or even its predecessor, a system-centric world, not a data-centric world. So what you need going forward for the future, it's not a siloed paradigm of data management, but a data fabric. 3 years ago, we introduced the idea of the data fabric at Insight, building on our heritage of data management leadership and expertise. And today, we've augmented that vision dramatically, providing a full range of hybrid cloud services that simplify the management of applications and data across all of the disparate clouds, be it public, private, and all of the places where you put your data. Today, Data Fabric already connects hundreds of thousands of endpoints deployed in production environments at customers large and small. We have over 1,000 customers in production on hybrid cloud use cases of the Data Fabric, and it's growing extremely rapidly. The reason for this success is that the Data Fabric unleashes the full potential of the data in your organization, for your customer, with true business impact. It provides data visibility and insight, data access and control, data protection and security, and it helps you achieve your digital transformation objectives. So you can start by deploying the Data Fabric to harness the power of the hybrid cloud, which will allow you to embrace the IT imperative that encompass your digital roadmap. Or you can also deploy the Data Fabric to build a next-generation data center, combining the world's best converged and hyper-converged infrastructure solutions and radical new form of object storage to benefit from the serverless computing in the cloud in a borderless data center. Or you can embrace the Data Fabric to simplify and modernize your traditional data center environment with the world's leading all-flash arrays and the world's best software-defined data management infrastructure. All of these solutions have been part of NetApp's own transformation. You heard from George again and again. A couple of years ago, we declared that we were going to fundamentally change our investments to prioritize the portfolio of innovations that enable the digital transformation roadmaps of our customers. And we also said that we would fundamentally change how we operate our business because we needed to evolve. And over the last few quarters, the momentum and the results of this transformation journey has become increasingly apparent, not only to us, but also to you. And I have to thank you because you rewarded us by giving us your business in a major way. Everybody knows we're one of the top 5 enterprise storage company in the world, but today we're completely unique in the fact that we're the fastest growing all-flash array vendor, we're the fastest growing SAN vendor, we're the fastest growing integrated infrastructure vendor, and we are the fastest cloud IT vendor. Who would have thought that NetApp could do all of this? All of our discipline and all our hard work and focus on customer success is finally paying off. And I particularly want to thank you, our customers, for the trust and the confidence that you put in us. These are the broadest and deepest market share gains we've made in our 25-year history. Just outstanding results. And it's supported with clear, defensible innovation leadership in every category that matters. We're the leading storage operating system provider. We're the leading all-flash array storage operating system provider. And you will see NetApp announce leadership in every category that matters. The product demonstration that you will see tomorrow will blow you away. I guarantee you that. So we've never had a time where we have owned virtually every world record that is available to own in storage. I particularly want to thank our engineering teams that have been involved in creating and expanding our leadership. They are giving us the best product in the industry. Thank you, guys. But as you know, it's not only about engineered systems. We're now offering the best NFS service in the cloud with our partnership with Microsoft Azure, not only for our customers, but also for non-NetApp customers, new cloud buyers, cloud architects, DevOps people, data scientists. We're expanding our footprint, and tomorrow you'll see a demonstration of that enterprise NFS service here on main stage. And you can find more information on NetApp and Microsoft booth, but also if you want to sign up, you can go to NetApp as your preview. This is truly revolutionary and truly unique. And we're not stopping at NFS as a service, but we're also announcing deeper integration with Microsoft Azure with products such as Cloud Control for Office 365 and AltaVault. It's really an incredible, exciting time at NetApp, and we are in a unique position in our industry. Let me describe to you the way I see the landscape. On one end, you have two companies that have decided to be the equivalent of department stores. You can buy almost anything that's IT with them. They're not specialized in anything. Department stores are convenient. But we usually don't go to a department store for expert advice. On the other end, you have companies that are definitely exiting the storage market, transforming themselves into managed services company or cloud services company. And then you've got the startups, public or private. When they're public, their stock trades below their IPO price. When they're private, they have a hard time finding money for the next round of financing unless they're willing to take a deep discount from their previous round. And then there's us. Fastest growing, profitable, committed to innovation, with a unique cloud strategy, the broadest ecosystem in the industry, and a commitment to customer success that's been one of the foundation of this company for 25 years. So I'm asking you, when you're thinking about the right partner to take you through this digital transformation, when you're thinking about how are you going to change the world with data, why not align yourself with NetApp? More so now than ever before. Over the course of the next couple of days, we're going to bring you more information about changing the world with data. We have more customers teaching customers. and more of the lessons from practitioners. Please take advantage of it. Under the leadership of Gene English, our new CMO, we are changing the company. We are changing our messaging. We're elevating our pitch. There's a tremendous amount of things to learn about this new NetApp. We talked about empowering the world to change with data. Ken talked about using data to change the world at large. So today, as I'm closing, I would like to ask you to think really, really hard about how you are going to take this opportunity to make our world a better place and to change it with data. It's truly an honor for us to have all of you here at Insight 2017. I wish us an exciting, enriching, and rewarding event. And I thank you for being here. And now, before you leave, one more thing. I would like you to reach under your seat, because there's a pair of these things. Get up and get in the tempo. Come on, we need this for social media. Welcome to 2017 Insight. Please follow the drummers. Nice job. Please follow all the drummers to Insight Central. Have a great evening. Thank you very much.